All right, hello, magical friends. This is Alice from Which Way Wellness, and I wanted to start things off with saying welcome. We get some of our messages for wellness, validating ourselves with the tarot, and we're going to kick it off with the Fool. So let's be fools. So, the Fool most often appears kind of looking like this one. And we'll talk a bit more about the imagery in the card and some feelings that you may have about it. But just wanted to orient us. So, first off, let's take a step back and look at the reasons that you might be looking to the cards for messages, for inspiration, healing, what have you. So tarot cards are just rich with symbolism. And these symbols illustrate the patterns, the cycles, spirals that we encounter in our lives. And the messages from these cards may help you understand the relationship that you have with yourself, may understand relationships with other people, or even your relationship within any systems that you are a part of. So we're going to look at what's happening behind the curtain. What's behind the veil? So kind of like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. Most decks of tarot cards come with a guidebook, sometimes known as the Little White Book. And I want to acknowledge that a lot of these guidebooks are heavily based on the writings and ideas and illustrations of the Rider-Waite-Smith system. It is a system that is and was heavily influenced by white, patriarchal, Christian, affluent, able-bodied, cisgender, heteronormative perspectives, right? Which, may not be something that you relate to very much. You could say it's a product of its time. It means so much so that Pamela Coleman Smith, the illustrator, was not given credit for her contributions for a long time. So keeping that in mind, we're going to acknowledge the times that we've discovered, the emperor has no clothes. The meaning that's traditionally comes with the card might not fit, might not suits our lived experience. It might not feel authentic. And we're going to, switch things around so that way it can feel authentic and it can validate you. So going back to the Fool. So the Fool is an interesting card in that it is a beginning and an ending in a cycle. A lot of major arcana decks place it at the beginning. When you open up the deck of cards the first time and you go through it, the Fool is usually maybe that first one that you see. Sometimes it's at the end. Other times it just kind of floats freely. It's just kind of it doesn't really have an anchor because of, this, it's a zero. It's an egg. It's this potential. It might be kind of like the Joker card in a deck of playing cards. And which is very fitting for it because, think about the Fool. Think about what it means. In most decks, it's depicted as some type of wanderer if they're using people in the deck. So I showed you the one from the Radiant Tarot. This one is from Slow Hauler. Again, we have a wanderer, somebody who is, trudging their way through on some sort of an adventure. Has a pack, has a stick. In some, may have some sort of animal that accompanies them, some sort of little companion. Like here, we've got this little, where is it? This little dog. Sometimes it's a cat. Who knows? It could be all sorts of things. And in other decks, similar to this one in the Forager's Daughter, there isn't like a wandering person, but there is still imagery that evokes this sense of potential and beginnings. And here, literally, we have an egg, which is an oval shape. Ah, yeah, there we go. Yeah, you see what I mean here. They may have a pack if it is portraying a person, even if it's portraying an animal, it's this sense of, moving through the world without a care. And that, they may be looking toward your left-hand side of the card, off in that direction. Sometimes it's associated with looking towards the past, but not always. Uh, I've seen other Fool cards where they're going the other way. It doesn't, and that's going to kind of depend on the person doing the illustration and or writing up the meanings of the cards. So it's you're getting some of their perspective uh, with um, with the meaning. So an interesting thing, like I said before, like it's zero, completes a cycle, could be an oval or an egg. It's an indication of the potential ahead and how many possibilities might manifest as you make your way in your journey through the cards. The Fool might be you. The Fool, it might be a character that you relate to, one that breaks the fourth wall in a story, whether you're reading it or listening or viewing it. It's a character that makes an intentional effort to interact with you, the viewer, and they're acknowledging the stuff that's happening, providing kind of a sense of validation for the experiences. You might see them as a companion, or perhaps, like I said, it's your perspective. Often they're depicted as, with kind of a hopeful, pleasant, open expression, like very open body language, stepping forward. They're looking ahead with a sense of carefree youthfulness or naivete, but they're not necessarily watching where their feet are going. Some of them are depicted like they're just going to step off the edge, but you don't actually know how high that edge is. Are they going to step off, a 100-foot cliff, or are they just stepping off of a curb? Either way, could be dangerous. Never know. The other thing is it shows them if it's a person that's being depicted, they're generally moving in a way, they're using their feet. They're not using other modes of transportation. And I want to say that someone who is unable to walk could still embody the Fool. There is a wonderful trend, especially in recent years. There are more decks being created with diverse representation, not just bodies and genders, but also of abilities. And I will share links to those with you so you can also enjoy them. And another way is if you're not feeling representation from people in decks, that's where so many of these wonderful decks that have animals and plants, some combination, or even fantasy creatures, that might be what you resonate more with in terms of the energy. So, giving some thought about our reaction to the Fool. So, I want you to have a deck, get a deck, whether it's one you have in your physical possession or with online images. You can do an image search for the Fool card, and you're gonna have endless possibilities. And I want you to find one that elicits an emotional response. And now this might be one that makes you laugh. It might be one that annoys you. Maybe it kind of pisses you off, feels challenging, maybe a little scary. Well, there's no wrong ways to feel about this card. Now, your life experiences and perspective will influence what the Fool means to you. And this is going to vary wildly. So once you have your Fool, take a look at it. We're going to go with first impressions. So when you look at your Fool, what does it tell you right off the bat? So with the slow holler deck, this Fool that we have is trudging ahead through the dark. They have a flashlight that's helping show their way. Their shoelaces are untied, so that could be a problem. Um, the pack and the coat that they are wearing are red. I kind of like this sense of like the vitality in life. They do at least have a sleeping pad with them, but you're not really sure what else is in the pack that they're carrying. And they have a walking stick to help them balance along as they go. In the Forager's Daughters deck, like I showed before, like there's an egg, there's roots, there's little seedlings. There's also little chrysalises for butterflies. The egg is cracking. So all of these things are like just starting to emerge, maybe at the very beginning of their potential. But this potential, this starting, is actually also the end of a previous cycle. So there's a cycle that creates the egg. There's a cycle that creates the seed that goes in the ground there, that starts to root and starts to plant. And like the chrysalis comes from a caterpillar, which is going to come from butterflies. So it's like you see like this cycle is just a continual thing. And you're just seeing kind of a snapshot of a moment. And what does this moment say to you? What's the feeling you get from it? Is there any part of you that wishes that you could be that fool? Do you care? Uh, do you look for being carefree and wandering? What's your response? What and where do you feel this in your body when it shows up in your life? Are you judging the fool? Are you observing it? What are the thoughts that come to mind? Do you want to avoid being the fool at all costs? Is the fool doing any harm to themselves, to others in their life, or to you? And as you're working with these questions, whether you want to journal it or however you're gonna work with these questions, honor the feelings that come up in your body. Be attentive to your thoughts with compassion and empathy, and really like pay attention. What are the messages that you are getting? What does your gut tell you? What is your heart? What is your head? What does your past experience tell you about the fool? The fool could feel like it's unsafe. It's unpredictable for sure. I mean, imagine this. You'd like to be organized and have order. And then the fool comes traipsing through. They might cause all sorts of problems. It could be everything from leaving the front door open and tracking mud all over the house to, they're leaving a mess behind them or they cause chaos as they move through. And, does that bring up any feelings for you? The potential of that happening. And also think what it might be like to live like that. Got no clock, no schedule, no hindrances. You can explore, you can create, you can laugh, you can interact with other people without concern. And once you examine your responses and your feelings about the fool, you might realize you don't want any part of that energy. No thanks. You might relate to this rebellious expression and want more of it. If this is the case, look at the things that you do or you might be able to do to create or call in this full energy. Do you hesitate because it feels irresponsible? Even in any little way? There are consequences for better or worse for stepping outside of, expected behavior. And this can empower you beyond belief. And it can also separate you from other people, and relationships may feel challenging. It might be harder for you to work within, systems if you're just wanting to just break loose. Um, things like, unfortunately, we need money to live. And that money is usually coming from having to work, and having to work may impede on your ability to really work with and appreciate this fool energy. And there are going to be situations where it's not appropriate, it might not be safe. It's very much a balance, trying to kind of find what and how it's going to work. It's not usually very anchored, but for me personally, I find it very curious and vulnerable at the same time. And I have to be willing to be imperfect and make mistakes. And that has been challenging in my experience because there are other people that have expectations that, you make a mistake only once. And then they have no understanding for if you make it again. So, this fool and this energy that it embodies is a compelling archetype. And it's really worth giving some thought to how the fool can affirm your experiences and validate your feelings. And I would challenge you to say that if you notice that you're coming up with a lot of inner critic, oh, you shouldn't, oh, how dare you, oh, that's awful, kind of identify where that's coming from. And if that feels like those messages are authentic from you, maybe they're trying to protect something. Yes, there's all these nuances that come about with it. And it can be something that just, blows everything just wide open as you work with this card. It can be very powerful. And for additional fun, I'll share the link with you, but there's a song called Consequence Free by Great Big Sea. And for me, this song, the lyrics, the melody, everything is just like full of this energy of the fool. And I would love to know if you agree. So share your comments, your messages, your thoughts. I would love to have more dialogue about. I mean, this card in particular, there's just so much in it that's just amazing and wonderful. And I'm really excited to have you on this journey with me as we go through the symbols and the archetypes and the themes and the elements and all of these aspects of tarot cards and see what kind of wisdom we can apply to ourselves for improving our well-being, our mental state, our ability to know ourselves. Well, thank you, magical friends. Until next time, have fun.